Breaking news. Iowa State's head coach seems to be staying in Ames. That's right. Matt Campbell will not be taking the head coaching position of the Bears. But the question is, how good will the Cyclones be next season? We'll talk about it today on Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome in to Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day, making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Wherever you're watching or listening, be sure to subscribe so we can prove once and for all it is, in fact, a Cyclone State. Speaking of Cyclone State football, we're going to have to break down everything that's going on around that. Is Matt Campbell staying? Yes. Everything. There's actually quite a bit of news around that as well. Then TJ Otzelberger, we're going into that Otz's Thoughts portion of the show, and we'll break down the Iowa State UCF game in the third segment. Okay. Going to be an exciting show. Don't go anywhere. Before we get to all that, first things first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Okay, so today, let's just dive right on into it. Adam Schefter, this is, I guess, so yesterday, by the time this airs, yesterday, Adam Schefter has reported that Ben Johnson will be the new head coach of the Chicago Bears. What does that mean for Cyclones fans? We're not necessarily a Lions show here. We're not necessarily a Bears show here. It seems like it's a little bit irrelevant. Oh, that's right. Matt Campbell interviewed for the Bears head coaching position. If Ben Johnson is taking that, that means it's now no longer vacant. And then that therefore means that Matt Campbell is staying a Cyclone, which is where we want to be. That's all we could have ever asked for. And to be completely honest, I was very confused. Why is he taking this interview? It was never that he was really in the final running for that position. Did the Bears just kind of do a bunch of interviews, get a feel for some of these guys that could be NFL level talent? Maybe just see if they blow their doors in and surprise them with how good of coach they are. All possibilities, but from an Iowa State Cyclone perspective, why is Matt Campbell interviewing for this job after just signing a massive contract extension? I don't know, and it seems like we may never know, to be completely honest, as now it is going to be Ben Johnson, the head coach of the Chicago Bears. Now, that's kind of where the conversation as far as the NFL ends on today's show, but we are not getting off the Cyclones just yet. No. For some reason, it's currently Tuesday night, and the national championship game is playing at this moment as we speak. But there was a bunch of things that were put out today and honestly earlier this week. Way too early predictions for next season. I've seen it Big 12. I've seen obviously the top 25 across the entire college football landscape. And I just very interesting to me because part of it was the Matt Campbell situation. But then with the Ben Johnson hiring today, then you saw a few more of these kind of trickle in. And one thing I found to be quite interesting was not only the variety of where Iowa State was placed, but just how low they were. Well, I don't know. It's just an interesting situation to find yourself in. Okay. So where were they? They were anywhere from 18th to unranked. Now, is 18th unfair for the Cyclones? I don't think so. I think that's probably relatively accurate. And these way too early rankings. I mean, what do we talk about? Like the AP rankings what are they really worth during the season, right? I mean, it's just, we care about the committee. What does the committee think? But where do these AP rankings, like how important are they? Well, that level of importance is already magnitudes higher than a way too early top 25. I mean, like I said, the national championship game has not even concluded yet. Okay. So yes, they have a pretty good idea with the transfer portal now closed and all the bowl games besides this one are done. And so, yes, they have a pretty good idea, but still season's not even over yet. So this is like super, super duper, way too early type of rankings. So we have to take this with just about the biggest grain of salt you could possibly find. Think like a glacier. That's how big of a grain of salt we're talking here. So I'm not going to dive into the disrespect and I guess you could take that angle, but it's like, we don't play for another, January. So maybe like 9 months, 8 months I don't think that's, I mean, we got a ton of spring training videos to get pumped up for summer. It's going to be exciting. Okay. We got a long ways to go. So I'm not getting too ahead of myself here. But I just thought it was interesting, first off, that they were putting these rankings out. And number two, that they put Iowa State so low. And they put them at 4th in the Big 12. Interesting. Now, I'm not going to out any of these different journalists or stations because it's just people writing, to be completely honest. And everyone's opinion is valid. I mean, the things that I say into this microphone, I would not be surprised if there was someone else saying that I didn't know what I was talking about because their opinion is probably different than mine. With that being said, why do I think Iowa State is being slightly overlooked at that 18? But then that, the 18 was the highest I saw. So we got like a 20, a 22, a 24, and then a bunch of unranked. So unranked, I think, is unfair. 100%, I think that's too low. Why do I think that? Well, you got to remember, now Matt Campbell is returning. And the other interview that we talked about, excuse me, potentially would be Noah Pauley, the wide receiver coach and passing game coordinator for the Cyclones. Obviously, other than Matt Campbell, very important piece to this team. Very, very important piece to this team. And when he interviewed for the 49ers OC position, I got nervous instantly because what does that mean for Matt Campbell leaving? Right? That's a scary situation. He's already interviewing around. Well, Matt Campbell's not going anywhere. So I think we could tie down. We already know that Noah Pauley is not going to be the 49ers OC. That was kind of announced before the interview even, which was a weird situation. And we've talked about that a little bit. But overall, I am now almost 100% certain that Noah Pauley will be in the building. Matt Campbell will be in the building. Oh, yeah. Have you guys ever heard of this guy? What's his name? Is it Rocco Becht? Oh, yeah. He'll be back. If you haven't heard of him, you should go look him up. Pretty important piece of the Cyclones. Yes, we are losing 2 of the best wide receivers in the nation this year. But with our wide receiver coach staying in the building, I'm fairly confident in what we've got going for next year. I mean, is that unfair? And then obviously you look at the transfer portal moves that have been made so far. Xavier Townsend of UCF and Chase Sowell of East Carolina. I am more than excited to see what those guys do. Excuse me, as wide receivers. Then defensively, actually, before we get to defense, you want to talk about Taylor Mouser, OC coming back, and Carson Hansen as well. Gabe Burkle, tight end. I mean, I've got high hopes for this offense and everything they can do. Defensively, there is a slight concern. We've talked about the transfer portal and everything that happened with that, but just to recap, obviously Tyler and Onyedem leaving for Texas A&M, and then Trent Jones II and Kennard Snyder, 3 DNs on their way out. But then you look at who we brought in: Cannon Butler of UNI, Vontre Malone of Tulsa, DB Trey Bell from Lindenwood. We're getting some solid transfer portal action. And so, yes, we're returning quite a few. We're bringing Matt Campbell back. Noah Pauley, also very important in my opinion. I'm very excited to see what he does with these wide receivers. You're bringing back the running back that has kind of been shown to be that guy in Carson Hansen, especially after the Miami game. And I think unranked is too low. I do. 4th in the Big 12 makes sense. Obviously, the way that we ended the Big 12 year wasn't perfect, but I don't think unranked in the top 25 is fair. Let's just put it that way. I would say right around that 20 to 16 feels a little bit high. Somewhere in there is where I'd put this team right now. And then in the top, in the Big 12, maybe we're talking 3-4-ish with some really solid teams. Obviously, ASU is returning a ton of starters. So we're going to have to beat teams. We're going to have to play games. We're going to have to win these games to be ranked higher. And it's just leaves the road ahead. What can the Cyclones prove? What can they get done next year? We'll see. But with Matt Campbell in house, it's going to be very, very exciting. That's for sure. Speaking of top coaches in Ames, obviously Matt Campbell is one, but we know what we think of TJ Otzelberger. Question is, what is he thinking right now? We're going to break down Otz's thoughts coming up right after this. From the first whistle to the final drive, FanDuel makes the NFL playoffs even more exciting. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $300 in bonus bets if you win your first bet. That's $300 to keep the action going. The FanDuel app is easy to navigate, and the variety of bets keeps every game exciting. Plus, when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around for your winnings. Whether you're betting on your favorite team or just looking to add some extra excitement to the playoffs, FanDuel has you covered. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today and get started with $300 in bonus bets. That's FanDuel.com. Make this playoff season unforgettable with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Shifting gears here, we move from football to the hardwood, from the gridiron to basketball, if you will. You're here with Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And one of my favorite things to break down is TJ Otzelberger's thoughts. Okay. This guy is a wizard. I don't know how he thinks in a way that is just like supernatural almost, but every time he gets behind the mic, we got to break it down. And on January 20th, Monday, January 20th, he had a chance to sit down behind the mic and share his thoughts. Obviously, about the West Virginia loss that the team suffered, but also kind of about the team as a whole right now. Okay, so I've got a few points that I kind of want to break down from this game and some things that he said as a whole. And I think that they're very valid. He doesn't miss. We know this by now. Absolutely know this. Hang on one sec. Still battling that kind of cold situation. Okay. First thing, he got asked about the 3-pointers. Obviously, the statistics was not a main point of conversation in this presser, but it was certainly something that was talked about. 1 of 17 from 3. And he to be honest, he was kind of like, look, I've looked, we kind of looked back at the past. We've won games with 1-3, 2 threes, 3 threes. And we've won good games. So he kind of said, like, we don't have to win on 3-pointers. And I'm like, well, I feel like shooting better would probably be better. No, I feel like that'd be a good thing. But then he kind of elaborated by saying, the more we move the ball, we create space, and we get to the foul line more. He's like, we probably wouldn't be talking about 1 of 17 from 3 if we had, 20, I think he said 20, but I would say 25 free throw attempts. And that's just another way you can win. You add 25 points to that. That's a different game. That's a very different game. Now, I'm not saying Iowa State didn't shoot anything from the line, but of course, more times you get to the line, as opposed to going 1 of 17 from 3. Basically, his point was there's more ways to win this game, which is what I like, because that's one of the strengths of this Iowa State team that we've mentioned in the past, is just how strong they are in multiple facets. And I think that this game was a perfect opportunity for them to kind of see, okay, if we're not getting it this way, we can get it another way. We can get it through, the foul line, or get it through this way. That way, I almost tried to transition, but I want to go to this next. So make it very clear. This is the next point. And he talks about, obviously, the spacing in that, and the 1 of 17 shooting. It's a perfect segue into, this was later in their presser, but he was asked about shooting variance game to game. So they shoot 1 of 17 against West Virginia. They'll play UCF tonight, and I'll break that down here in the third segment. But he was kind of asked, like, do you believe in the concept you can shoot 1 of 17 and then come back on a Tuesday and shoot 50% or 60%? And he said, I love this. This quote, just bars. Okay. So get ready, strap in, grab your popcorn. He says, I believe in the philosophy that everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. And I was like, whoa, hang on. I feel like that came out of absolutely nowhere. Nothing to do with the question at all. So I'm already kind of on my heels with this answer. And I'm like, where's he going with this? I honestly can't even wait. What does he say? He says, well, you drive into the hoop. That's essentially kind of the punch in the mouth, right? You're trying to get to the rim. What does that do? Creates opportunities, creates space, opportunities for kickouts. Then you got swing opportunities. He did mention this team, especially in a game with, I would classify as pretty major shooting woes, 1 of 17, 5.6% or whatever it was. In a game like that, it's really easy for these guys to kind of just settle into the corner and not play the same game they normally would. And he's like, that's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to keep everyone involved all the time, even on nights when they're not shooting lights out. We don't want them to feel like they can just sit down and relax and do nothing. Like we still want them very active. And so if that is kind of just whipping the ball around, being that guy there for the shot when they drive and it creates that space. And he basically said, everyone has plans till they get punched in the mouth. So you could drive into the paint as opposed to over dribbling and forcing last second shots. That's a point I'll make here in a second. But the dribbling in with the aggression, the kick out, you've got a more open look. You've got and that's the perfect segue here. But you've got the better look at the shot, which is going to create higher percentage than a previous opportunity you may have had in a contested situation or against the clock. But also, it's like the aggressiveness carries over. So he's like, if that's aggressive, then we're going to be aggressive on the shot, and you're better when you're aggressive. Not over-aggressive, but aggressive as opposed to passive on your heels. And so we'll make more buckets that way, which I like. I think that makes complete sense. I like where his head's at there. The other thing that I mentioned and alluded to, and this is the segue I'm going with, over-dribbling and forcing last-second shots. The over-dribbling was something that was a major talking point in this presser. He kind of was just like, look, we need to move the ball more. We need to be lateral with it. We need to find opportunities, ways for this ball to move. Granted, the amount of steals, to turnovers was like 100%. So 14 turnovers and West Virginia had 14 steals. He's like, I don't know if I've ever seen that. So I do like that Iowa State wasn't, I guess, I don't really know how else to say that, but they didn't have any self-inflicted turnovers, even though almost all of the steals were like, the ones I saw were like, dude, that's kind of on us. Yes, they took advantage. That's kind of on us. And so that's an interesting kind of dynamic there. But be that as it may, like the stationary thing is kind of what's causing that, right? So that's where he's like, if we could just drive and move the ball around, that's that aggressive portion of what he's getting at there. And if you're the aggressor, you're the one punching in the mouth, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. The other team now has an opportunity. What do? They don't know. They don't have a plan anymore. And so I like where his head's at there. I do. The stagnancy, I guess, is the word I'm going to use, which is not a real word, of the game against West Virginia was certainly alarming, but I like that it's on his radar. That's 100% where I want him to be. Now, the other major thing that this presser was kind of centered around was the Milan Momcilovic situation. How is that going to work out? And obviously, kind of the main name that gets brought up with Momcilovic right now is Nate Heise. Okay. Nate Heise is, admittedly, just not playing up to his standard at this point in time in the season. And so TJ was asked, what's the deal with Nate Heise and how are we going to approach this situation? And TJ essentially said, look, we're not going to ask Nate Heise to do things that he's not capable of doing. I think it's completely fair to ask Nate Heise of things he has done and is capable of doing, especially at the college basketball level. Okay. And then he names off three things in particular. We're going to ask him to hunt the rhythm three. We're going to ask him to close out with aggression. And we're going to ask him to make plays in transition. Right. And so I like that he's essentially not asking Nate to do too much, but still expects. You can't just be like, well, it's not that big a deal. Like, it is kind of a big deal, especially now with Milan on the bench for a couple of weeks here. We need someone to step up. We need someone to play. And Nate Heise, in his presser, was asked, how are you going to handle? You're kind of in a bit of a slump right now. And he said, basically, just got to keep confidence up and talking with people. And I just got to realize that I've done this in the past and I can do it in the future. So the Nate Heise situation, be very interested to see if this UCF game is maybe the game where he kind of finds it, right? It might only take one game. So I am 100% looking forward to that. But overall, the Momcilovic situation is one that a lot of people have eyes on right now. Because, yes, this team was almost unstoppable in their first, 16 games of the season. They were 15-1, I believe it was. Where is this here? Yes, they were 15-1 prior to this game. So 16 games this season, they were pretty much unstoppable. They lost to Auburn, obviously. But then things change. You lose Milan. And how do you handle that situation? Well, we'll see tonight against UCF. We'll break that down coming up right after this. Do not go anywhere. This game is going to be pure electricity. This message is brought to you by PrizePicks, the place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions in winnings, PrizePicks has changed the game in daily fantasy sports. Whether it's the playoffs or regular season, PrizePicks has made it easier than ever to win big while enjoying all the football action. Now, it's playoff time, and there's no better way to get in on the action than with PrizePicks. Here's how it works. You simply pick more or less on at least 2 players, and if your picks hit, you could win up to 1,000 times your cash. Yes, that's right. 1,000 times your money just by making a few simple picks. For me, I'm all about the hot takes this season. This week on PrizePicks, I'm looking at Lamar Jackson for more than 250 passing yards and Travis Kelce for more than 70 receiving yards. It's fun to predict and easy to play. Plus, with PrizePicks Flex Play, you can still get double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. And with the app, you get your winnings fast, sometimes in as little as 15 minutes. Ready to run your game this football season? Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 just for playing. Don't wait. Take your game to the next level with PrizePicks. PrizePicks, run your game. Okay, we've talked about conceptually and the aughts thoughts side of things with this men's basketball team, but now we got to get down to the nitty-gritty here on Locked On Cyclones by Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Iowa State men's basketball will be taking on University of Central Florida, UCF, the Knights, tonight on Tuesday in Hilton at home. Going to be excited, obviously. Get to play at home. It's an awesome look for the Cyclones. Look at this UCF team. We've talked about them prior to this podcast. I don't know if you remember, but UCF played Kansas. When we previewed Kansas, we talked about that. Kansas won that game by 51 points. 51 points. That's a lot of points. I mean, that is quite a few points. Then they come back and they beat Colorado. Then they lose to Arizona. And then they beat Arizona State. And then they lose to Houston. Okay. Bit of a roller coaster here. Bit of a roller coaster. Their entire conference play has been a roller coaster. That being said, I'll mention it here. They're 3-3 right now. Win-loss, win-loss, win-loss in their last 6. All of them being conference. Obviously, I mentioned from Kansas, but they beat Texas Tech to start off their conference play. So Texas Tech, really good team right now. Really good team. Then you lose to Kansas in kind of a dominant, that's a tough one, 51 points. Then you beat Colorado, who's a pretty solid team. Lose to Arizona by 8. They're a good team right now too. Then you beat Arizona State. Then you lose to Houston. Now here's the kicker though. Houston, currently one of the best teams in the Big 12 and potentially even in all of basketball. UCF led this game with like 8 seconds to go. They ended up losing 69-68, and Houston stays undefeated when holding a team to less than 70 points. They were really, really close to not having that go their way. They're one bucket away. They kind of threw it inside, and now, to be completely honest, I don't think I ever had a doubt that things were going to go the way they did, but that bucket doesn't fall. UCF beats Houston. Just a few, Kansas, what was that, 2, 3, 4 games ago? You lose by 51. Then you almost beat Houston, number 10 ranked. And then you go to play Iowa State in Hilton as well. Yeah, it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough for UCF here. But Iowa State, the situation that we're in, we got to play. We got to come ready to roll in this one. That is for sure. Now, let's take a look at this UCF team kind of as a whole. Where am I? I wanted to go with this one here. They're 10th in the Big 12 at that 3-3 mark, and they're 12-5 on the year. Now, to mention, they did beat number 13 Texas A&M in their non-conference, so it's not like they didn't play anybody. And then we already talked about their conference schedule. And then this one I'll save. So their team as a whole, to lead the points right now as it currently stands, you got Keyshawn Hall at 16.9, a guard for UCF. And then backing him up is Darius Johnson at that 14.9 mark. Now, interestingly enough, leading the rebounds for the Knights is Keyshawn Hull as well at 6.8. And then assists, it's going to be Johnson yet again with 4.1. Okay. Let's see here. 3 points. Johnson's going to lead it with 41. And Sellers, okay, we haven't talked about Sellers yet. Jalen Sellers is going to be shooting about 40%. So this team pretty solid from three. Those top few guys there. But overall, I mentioned the points. How many are they scoring? 16.9, 14.9, 14.2. Then it dips down a little bit. Question is, how many are they giving up? Currently, they are giving up 77.4 points per game. That is the most in the Big 12. That's why I kind of alluded to this in the second segment. I am very curious to see, can Nate Heise find it in this game? Can he? I don't know. We'll see. Against Houston, I pulled this as obviously, in my opinion, their most impressive game. Point leader was Mustafa Thiem, had 18. Jordan Ivy Curry had 14. Darius Johnson with 13 there. And then after that, it gets kind of dicey. You got Dallin Coleman with 8. So that's kind of what we saw against Houston. But Houston, very, very good team, very, very good team. Now, either way, let's take a look at kind of this conceptually from the standpoint of Iowa State. Obviously, TJ Otzelberger was asked about this game in particular because it's the day before the game that this press conference went down. And he noted the interior physicality and the length of the front court from this UCF team, the presses and traps that they go with, very obviously something that they have to keep in mind. And then the turnovers, they work really hard to turn you over. Iowa State, something we got to fix for sure. And then their offensive boards. What am I looking for in this game now? That's the question, right? That is the question. I personally think we need to obviously, number one, minimize the turnovers and try to get back on the turnover side of things to increase transition play. TJ was asked about about the turnover position, kind of in the transition amount of play in that West Virginia game. And he said, hey, the way West Virginia was playing it was kind of we're going to let them get the board, but we're going to have a set defense. So if we can increase the amount of transition play by increasing the amount of steals, boom, that's already an advantage. Then in the half court, well, I would like to see obviously more ball movement because that was a major problem against West Virginia. But I'd like to see us win the game in a way that we can win the game. So if we come out and we're shooting 1 of 10 in the first half from 3, let's find a way to get to the line, get on the inside, pick and rolls, whatever it is. There's so many different ways to get it done. I want to see this team find that way. Okay. And then obviously, we need to figure out the Milan hole. How are we going to fill it? Which is kind of exactly what I said, just literally just now with figuring out a way to win. But who is it? When is it? Where is it? How is it? Those all are questions that I need to have answered. Do I think Iowa State could beat UCF? Absolutely. Absolutely. Especially at home. This is going to be a great bounce back game for the Cyclones. But we need to bring our A game. Okay. West Virginia now ranked after beating Iowa State and 4-2 in the conference. And you guys were telling me, oh, don't fret too much about West Virginia. They're good. They are good. They are very good. But so is Iowa State. So I don't see why we're not bringing the A game on every game. We got to be doing it. We got to be rocking and rolling. And UCF, next opponent up. Let's do it. 40 minutes. Here we go. A to Z. Bring it all. Iowa State, I think they can do it for sure. But I have more questions about than just can we get the win? How do we win? Right? How are we going to do it? And who's going to step up in that Milan kind of vacancy, if you will? I guess we'll find out. We will find out. We'll cover it tomorrow on tomorrow's episode of Locked On Cyclones. Thanks for sticking around. If you're not subscribed yet, what are you doing? Let's prove once and for all it's a Cyclone State. Until next time, Cyclone fans. Sayonara.